My parents spent $312,000 on my sister. They spent $47,000 on me. I didn't scream. I didn't beg. I wrote a letter and read it out loud at her engagement party in front of 50 people. What happened next destroyed everything she thought she knew about her perfect life. My name is Rachel, and this is the story of how I became invisible in my own family. I was 12 the first time I understood I was disposable. It was my piano recital, the one I'd practiced for 6 months straight, the one where I was performing a Chopin piece that made my teacher cry during rehearsals. I wore my nicest dress. I got to the auditorium early. I saved 3 seats in the front row. They never came. 2 hours later, I found out why. Madison had a soccer game. Not a championship. Not even playoffs. A regular season game that they'd somehow double-booked in their minds. When I called Mom crying from the payphone in the lobby, she said, "Oh, honey, we'll catch the next one." There was no next one. That was the recital. The culminating performance. I stopped playing piano after that. I was 16 when I realized my parents didn't remember my birthday unless Madison reminded them. She'd come into my room the night before, awkward and guilty looking, and say, "Hey, so tomorrow's your birthday." I told Mom. The next day, there'd be a card on the kitchen table with $50 inside, and a note that said, "Sorry we've been so busy. Love you." Madison always got a party. I was 19 when I spent Thanksgiving in my dorm room eating microwaved mac and cheese because my parents decided to go to Madison's college for the weekend instead. "It's her first Thanksgiving away from home," Dad explained on the phone. "She's really homesick." I'd spent 2 Thanksgivings alone by then. No one asked if I was homesick. I was 21 when I graduated college with a 3.8 GPA, 2 jobs worth of experience, and a biology degree I'd earned entirely on scholarships and student loans. I walked across that stage in a sea of families cheering and crying and taking pictures. My section was silent. After the ceremony, I sat in a Denny's by myself, still wearing my cap and gown, eating pancakes while families around me celebrated. The waitress asked where my people were. I told her they had another event. She gave me free pie. It was the only graduation gift I got that day. Madison graduated 2 years later with a lower GPA from an Ivy League school my parents paid for in full. They threw her a party with 100 guests, catered food, and a slideshow. Then they took her on a cruise to Alaska. I got a text that said, "Proud of you," with a thumbs-up emoji. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you to the moment everything finally shattered. I was 23, working the front desk at a physical therapy clinic, when my mom called on a Tuesday in March. The moment I heard her voice, tight, rehearsed, I knew something was coming. "Rachel, honey, we need to talk to you about something important. Can you come by tonight?" That's never good news for me. Important conversations in my family usually mean I'm about to find out about something that's already been decided without me. I showed up at 7 to find both parents sitting at the kitchen table. Madison wasn't there, which was unusual. This was clearly about her. "Sit down, sweetheart," Dad said. Mom twisted her wedding ring. "We wanted to tell you before Madison, so you'd have time to process." My stomach dropped. "Process what?" "We've decided to help Madison buy a house," Dad said. "The market is crazy right now and we want her to build equity. We're covering her down payment. $80,000. The room tilted. $80,000. I said it flatly, testing the words in my mouth to see if they'd make sense on the second try. They didn't. "It's an investment in her future," Mom added quickly. "She found this beautiful townhouse in Portland near her new job. It's such a great opportunity." I started laughing. Actually laughing, because the alternative was setting something on fire. "I've been eating ramen 4 nights a week trying to save for grad school," I said. "I have $4,200 in my account. I'm living with 2 roommates where I can hear everything through the walls. And you're giving her $80,000 for a house." "Don't be dramatic," Dad said, his jaw tightening. "Madison has worked very hard. So have I." The words came out like a gunshot. I worked 2 jobs through college. I graduated with honors. What do I have to do to matter to you? "That's not fair," Mom said, and her eyes started watering, those manipulative tears she'd been using on me since childhood. "We love you both equally. Then give me $40,000 for grad school. Give me 20. Give me anything that proves you remember I exist." They looked at each other. That silent communication that always excluded me. "We can help you with applications," Dad offered. "Write a recommendation letter." "I don't need a recommendation letter from you. I need parents who see me." "Madison is at a different stage of life," Mom said, standing now. "She's getting married next year. She needs stability. Everything stopped. She's getting married? And let me guess, you're paying for the wedding. Silence. Of course you are. I grabbed my purse and headed for the door. Rachel, don't leave like this, Dad said. But he didn't stand up. He never stood up for me. Enjoy your favorite daughter. I hope she's worth losing the other one. I slammed the door so hard a picture frame fell and shattered in the entryway. I heard the glass break as I walked away. For 2 weeks, my phone stayed silent. No calls, no texts, no let's talk about this. Just nothing, which told me everything I needed to know. I couldn't stop thinking about the $80,000. Not because I wanted a house, I didn't, but because it was so obscenely casually unfair. It was the kind of money they could just decide to hand over without flinching. So I started adding it up. Everything. Every expense I could remember or verify. I created a spreadsheet. I called my grandmother. I dug through old emails. What I found made me physically sick. Madison's total, $312,000. Private high school tuition, Ivy League education, the BMW, her apartment expenses, sorority fees, the France study abroad program, her post-graduation trip to Thailand, and now the down payment. My total, $47,000. Including the used car they bought me for $3,500 when I was 17. I stared at that number for hours. The disparity was so extreme it almost seemed fake. But every line item was documented, verified, real. This wasn't favoritism. This was systematic erasure. And I was going to make sure everyone knew it. I spent a week writing it. Every word had to be perfect. Every fact had to be bulletproof. I couldn't sound hysterical or vengeful. I had to sound like exactly what I was. The daughter who'd finally done the math. 3 pages. Single-spaced. Devastating. I printed 5 copies. 1 for my parents. 1 for Madison. 1 for my grandmother. 1 for my Uncle Tom. 1 for myself. But I wasn't going to mail them. That would have been too easy, too avoidable. I needed witnesses. I needed a moment they couldn't escape or rewrite. The perfect opportunity came 2 weeks later. Madison's engagement party. I wasn't even properly invited, just a generic text from Madison that said, "You should come if you want." But I RSVP'd yes immediately. This was going to be my stage. Here's something I didn't learn until much later. Madison had always felt it too. Not the neglect, God no. She felt the weight, the pressure, the constant, suffocating expectation that she'd be perfect because so much had been invested in her. She told me once, years before everything exploded, that she was lucky. I didn't have to deal with being the favorite. She said it was exhausting being in the spotlight all the time. I wanted to throw something at her. But what I didn't know then, what I wouldn't understand until after the letter, was that she'd spent her whole life terrified of disappointing them. Every achievement had to be celebrated because anything less would mean all that money, all that attention, all that investment was wasted. She was drowning in different water. But she was still drowning. I didn't have sympathy for her then. I'm not sure I do now. But I understand it better. She'd been given everything and learned nothing. I'd been given nothing and learned everything. In a sick way, I got the better deal. I wore red. A bold, unapologetic red dress I bought specifically for this night. I wanted to be visible for once in my goddamn life. The engagement party was at an upscale restaurant downtown. Private dining room, 50 guests, professional photographer, custom cocktail menu. Everything was cream and gold and elegant. Everything screamed money. Madison spotted me the second I walked in. Her smile faltered, then recovered with practiced ease. "Rachel, you came." She hugged me with performative enthusiasm. "I'm so glad you're here." "Wouldn't miss it," I said, matching her energy. "Congratulations on everything. The house, the engagement. You must be on top of the world." "Oh my gosh, I am. You have to see the ring." She thrust her hand toward me. The diamond was massive, obscene. Derek designed it himself. "It's stunning," I said. And it was. Everything in Madison's life was stunning. I made small talk for an hour. Smiled at strangers. Nursed a glass of wine. Waited. The toast started after dinner. Derek's best man told a funny story about their college days. Madison's maid of honor cried through a speech about friendship. Dad rambled about his little princess growing up, about how proud he was, about how he'd always known she was destined for great things. I felt nothing. I was ice. When he finished, I stood. My heart was hammering so hard I could taste it. I'd like to say something. The room went quiet. Madison looked confused. Mom looked panicked. Dad looked like he wanted to bolt. "I won't take long," I said, pulling the folded letters from my clutch. I just wanted to give my sister an engagement gift. Something meaningful. I walked to Madison first, placed the letter in her hands. Then I gave one to my parents, one to my grandmother, one to Uncle Tom, who was sitting near the back looking uncomfortable. "Read it now," I said, returning to my spot. "It's important." Madison unfolded the letter. Her eyes scanned the first paragraph. I watched her face change, confusion, shock, something like horror. "Rachel, what is this?" Her voice was barely a whisper. "The truth," I said simply. "I thought it was time everyone knew it." "What did the letter say?" "I'll give you the version I gave them. Dear family, by the time you finish reading this, I'll already be gone. Not just from this party, but from your lives. This is my resignation from a family that never wanted me as much as they wanted the idea of having 2 daughters. For 23 years, I've watched my parents systematically invest in Madison's future while rationing scraps for mine. I've watched them spend $312,000 on her dreams and $47,000 on my survival. I did the math. Every tuition payment, every car, every trip, every opportunity. I have receipts. But this isn't about money. It's about what money represents, who matters and who doesn't. Madison, do you remember my piano recital when I was 12? The one I practiced for 6 months. The one you had a regular season soccer game during? I sat in an empty auditorium and played Chopin for strangers while our parents cheered for you. I quit piano the next week. Not because I wasn't good. Because no one cared if I was. Do you remember my college graduation? I don't blame you if you don't. You weren't there. None of you were. Madison had a volleyball tournament. I ate pancakes alone in a Denny's in my cap and gown while families around me celebrated. You got a cruise to Alaska for yours. Think about that. I stopped telling you when I made Dean's List, because no one reacted. I stopped inviting you to my work events because you never came. I stopped calling on holidays because I was tired of hearing about Madison's latest adventure while you asked me nothing about my life. I became a ghost in my own family. And you didn't even notice. The $80,000 down payment was just the final proof of what I'd always known. I was never going to be worth the investment. Not because I wasn't smart enough or accomplished enough, but because you'd already decided Madison was the one worth betting on. I don't hate you, Madison. I pity you. You've been raised to believe you're exceptional when really, you've just been protected from consequences. You've never had to prove yourself because approval was freely given. But I've had to earn every scrap of recognition, and I still failed to earn theirs. Here's the irony. I'm stronger now. I know how to survive. I know my value doesn't come from their validation. You're going to spend your life chasing their impossible standards, terrified of disappointing them. I'm free. Mom, Dad, you had 23 years to see me. You chose not to. Don't pretend this is about me being difficult or ungrateful. I tried everything. I excelled, I stayed quiet. I made myself small so Madison could shine. Nothing worked. So I'm done. Don't call. Don't text. Don't send flying monkeys to guilt me into coming back. I'm not your daughter anymore. Madison, you're not my sister. This is my resignation. Rachel. P.S. The second page has an itemized list of every expense I could verify. Check my work. You'll find I'm right. The dining room was a vacuum. No sound. No movement. Just 50 people frozen in collective shock. Madison's hands were shaking. She'd gone from tan to white in seconds. She looked up at me, then at our parents, then back at the letter. You are joking, she whispered. I'm not joking. Not even a little. $300,000? Her voice was rising, becoming shrill, cracking at the edges. That can't be right. That's insane. Turn to page 2, I said calmly. I itemized it. Mom was crying, actual tears streaming down her face. Dad looked like someone had hit him with a shovel. Guests were pulling out phones. Someone was definitely recording this. Perfect. Madison flipped to the second page. Scan the list. Ivy League tuition, $240,000. Private high school, $60,000. Study abroad, France $15,000. Post-grad trip, Thailand $8,000. BMW, new $45,000. Apartment expenses during college, $32,000. Sorority fees for years $12,000. Down payment for house, $80,000. Her face went red. You are joking, she screamed. The entire restaurant probably heard her. This is my engagement party. How dare you? How dare you do this? How dare I? I asked, still calm, which seemed to make her angrier. How dare you all? How dare you make me invisible for 23 years and expect me to smile about it? We never made you feel worthless. Dad finally found his voice. We treated you fairly. Read the letter, Dad. Really read it. Then tell me I'm wrong. Uncle Tom had finished his copy. He looked at my father with something like disgust. Jim, is this true? All of it? Dad couldn't answer. The proof was right there. Madison was spiraling now, looking around at her guests, at the photographer still holding his camera, at her future in-laws sitting near the front looking horrified. You're trying to ruin my life. You've always been jealous. I'm not jealous, Madison. I'm free. I picked up my clutch. Turned toward the door. Rachel, please. Mom was on her feet, reaching for me. We can talk about this. We can fix this. I stepped back, avoiding her touch. You had 23 years to fix this. You chose not to. That's on you. I walked out of that restaurant with my head high, leaving behind Madison's sobs and the whispered chaos of 50 witnesses. I didn't look back. The next 72 hours were chaos. My phone exploded. Texts, calls, voicemails. From family, from Madison's friends, from relatives I hadn't heard from since childhood. Everyone had an opinion. Some supported me. Uncle Tom called to say he'd had no idea the disparity was so extreme. He apologized for not noticing. My grandmother texted, I love you. I understand. You're brave. A few cousins reached out with their own stories. Different families, same dynamic. I wasn't alone in this particular hell. But most people thought I was a monster. How could you ruin her engagement party? How could you air family business so publicly? How could you be so cruel? The irony of being called cruel by people who'd watched me be neglected for years wasn't lost on me. Madison sent a 5-page email. It started angry, moved to defensive, ended with something that almost looked like self-awareness. She admitted maybe she'd had advantages. But she also blamed me for not communicating better and making things awkward. I deleted it without responding. My parents tried a different approach, bribery. They offered to pay for grad school. All of it. They offered to buy me a car. They offered to make things right. I declined everything. Because they didn't understand. It was never about the money. It was about the fact that they only cared about equity when I forced them to confront their failure publicly. It was about them trying to buy forgiveness instead of actually reflecting on what they'd done. They didn't see me as a person. They saw me as a problem to be solved with a checkbook. So I blocked their numbers. Changed my email. Moved to Colorado 2 months later without telling anyone where. 6 months later. I'm writing this from a studio apartment in Denver. It's small. It's mine. I work as a lab technician while I apply to grad programs. I have friends who don't know about the letter or the party or any of it. I'm learning what it feels like to be valued for who I am, not compared to an impossible standard. I haven't spoken to my parents or Madison since the engagement party. I'm not on social media anymore. I don't know if she bought the townhouse or if the wedding happened. And I don't care. People ask me if I regret it, the letter, the confrontation, burning it all down. The answer is no. Not for a second. Because that letter didn't just expose dysfunction. It freed me from waiting for love that was never coming. It let me stop making myself smaller so Madison could seem bigger. The hardest part wasn't walking away. It was accepting that the family I wanted, the one where both daughters mattered equally, never existed. I'd been mourning a fantasy. Now I'm building a reality. 2 months ago, something unexpected arrived. A letter. Forwarded through my grandmother, who's the only family member with my address. It was from Madison. I almost threw it away. But curiosity is a dangerous thing. Rachel, I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect a response. But I need you to know you were right about everything. After the party, after everyone left and the shock faded, I sat with your letter for days. I read it over and over. And I realized something awful. I knew. Deep down, I always knew Mom and Dad treated you differently. I just didn't want to admit it, because I benefited from it. I told myself you were dramatic, that families don't have to be perfectly equal, that you were just jealous. But you weren't wrong. The numbers don't lie. When Derek and I started planning the wedding, Mom wanted to book a venue that cost $50,000. And suddenly I thought about your graduation at Denny's. And I couldn't do it. I couldn't keep taking everything they offered when I knew they'd never offered you the same. Derek didn't understand. He said I was being ridiculous, that I should take what's given. And I realized he'd fallen in love with the version of me Mom and Dad created. Perfect, polished, never struggled. He didn't know the real me. Because I didn't know the real me. So I ended the engagement. I told Mom and Dad I didn't want the down payment. I got my own apartment that I pay for. I'm on a budget for the first time in my life. It's terrifying. It's humbling. It's necessary. I'm learning what you learned by force. How to depend on myself. I'm sorry I didn't defend you. I'm sorry I let them erase you. I'm sorry I was complicit. I don't expect anything from you. I just wanted you to know your letter changed my life. You were braver than I've ever been. Madison. I read that letter 3 times. I cried, for the relationship we never had, for the years we lost, for the different kinds of damage we both endured. But I didn't respond. Because Madison's awakening doesn't erase the past. It doesn't undo what was done. And it doesn't obligate me to welcome her back. Maybe someday we'll have a relationship. Maybe years from now, when she's done the real work and I've healed the real wounds, we can try again. But that day isn't today. And it might never come. People think forgiveness is strength. They think holding grudges makes you bitter, that letting go sets you free, that family is forever, so you have to find a way back. But sometimes forgiveness is just permission for people to hurt you again. Sometimes walking away isn't giving up. It's refusing to accept less than you deserve. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is close a door and never reopen it. My parents still don't understand what they did wrong. They think I'm being dramatic, punishing them unfairly, holding an unreasonable grudge over ancient history. But that's the thing about people who've never faced consequences. They don't think they should have to start now. I'm done teaching adults how to be decent parents. I'm done explaining why equity matters. I'm done fighting for scraps from people who should have given love freely. I'm done. And I've never been happier. So that's my story. The story of how a 3-page letter detonated a lifetime of dysfunction. The story of how I walked away from family and chose myself when no one else would. If you made it this far, thank you for witnessing this. Drop a comment and tell me, have you ever had to walk away from people who were supposed to love you unconditionally? How did you find the courage? And if you believe that justice doesn't have to be loud to be devastating, if you believe that walking away is sometimes the bravest thing you can do, if you believe your worth isn't determined by people who refuse to see you, welcome to the Justice Whisperer. Hit subscribe. You're home now.